I'm not the kind of guy who believes in the supernatural. I grew up in Montana, hunting, fishing, and spending entire weekends off-grid. The forest was my playground, my sanctuary. That's why, when my buddy Chase invited me on a week-long, solo backpacking challenge through Black Hollow Ridge, I was all in. Black Hollow isn't marked on tourist maps. It sits on the edge of Bitterroot National Forest, remote, dense, and mostly untouched. The kind of place where radio goes dead, and the trees grow so tight they block out the sun. Local hunters call it Dead Whisper, and they avoid it. I thought it was just backwoods superstition. We split up that morning at the drop-off point. Our challenge was simple. 3 nights alone, 10 miles apart, no cell phones, no GPS, just compasses and topographical maps. We'd meet at the pickup, road by Sunday evening. Chase headed east. I went west, straight into the heart of Black Hollow. By the first night, I was already uneasy. The forest didn't feel right. I've done wilderness hikes all over Yosemite, Yellowstone, the Cascades, and even in their deepest parts, nature breathes. Birds, crickets, the wind. But here, it was dead silent. No chirps, no rustling, not even mosquitoes. Then I started noticing the trees. They were off. I don't mean just gnarled or big. They were wrong. Some were growing in spirals, others bent into strange arches. A few had marks carved deep into their bark, like claw scratches, but too high up to be from any animal I know. Something about them made my skin crawl. That night, in my tent, I swore I heard something pacing outside. Heavy steps. Not a bear, not deer. Something walking upright. I held my breath and clutched my knife, but it never came close. Still, I didn't sleep. The next morning, I found boot prints outside. Not mine. Fresh, wide gate, deep impressions, like whoever left them was dragging something heavy behind them. Asterisk by day 2, I wanted out, but the forest wouldn't let me leave. I tried backtracking. I followed the trail I marked with orange ribbons, but they were gone, every single one. Trees that I could swear were behind me were suddenly ahead. My compass spun like crazy. It felt like the woods had swallowed me whole, and it was playing games. That evening, I found what I thought was an old ranger outpost, just a crumbled shack, half sunken into the earth. Inside were broken crates, rusted tins, and something that made my stomach drop. A torn park ranger jacket, fresh bloodstains on the collar, and carved into the wall, over and over, were the words, "IT doesn't bleed." I ran. I didn't stop until dark, stumbling through the brush until I reached a clearing. That's when I saw it. At the edge of the tree line stood a figure, tall, gaunt. Its skin was gray, almost bark-like, and it had no face, just sunken holes where eyes should be. Its limbs were too long, fingers dragging in the dirt, and it was just watching me, still not moving. I blinked, and it was gone. I didn't sleep that night, either. Something circled me again. The air felt charged. I swear I could hear it breathing, slow and rattling, like it was savoring every moment of fear I gave off. I tried singing, shouting, banging pots. Nothing scared it off, and then it spoke. A low voice, like gravel scraping metal, echoed through the trees. "It's your turn now." Asterisk, on the 3rd day, I cracked. I tore up my camp, shoved everything into my pack, and just ran. Compass be damned, I sprinted through the underbrush, tearing my legs on branches and rocks, screaming for help. Somehow, I stumbled onto a stream. I followed it for what felt like hours until I saw a sign, an actual trail sign. Fire Road, 7 to 2.3 miles. I cried when I saw it, but something was wrong. As I followed the trail, the forest started to melt. The trees bled sap that smelled like rotting meat. The air turned thick and wet, like breathing through a sponge. I saw shapes, half-formed things crawling in the corners of my vision. A man with no eyes, crawling on all fours. A deer standing on two legs, face split open like a flower. Then I saw Chase.or. I thought I did. He stood on the trail, waving, smiling. But his smile didn't move. His mouth was stuck open, eyes glassy, too wide. And when I stepped closer, I saw maggots wriggling in his throat. I bolted past him. Somehow, I made it to the road. I collapsed, just as headlights rounded the bend. It was a ranger truck. I don't remember much, just screaming, "Get me out!" over and over. They found me dehydrated, cut up, covered in dirt and blood that wasn't mine. They searched the woods for Chase for 2 weeks, never found a trace, not a footprint, not his pack, nothing. They told me I had a psychotic break, wilderness trauma, they called it. But I know what I saw. I know what followed me. Sometimes I wake up at night and I still hear it breathing. Last week, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, no stamp. Just a single sentence written in black ink. You left the forest, but it didn't leave you. And now, sometimes when I look into the trees behind my house, I swear something's still there, watching, waiting, like I said. I don't believe in the supernatural, but the forest does, and it doesn't forget. I never liked camping, but my brother, Adam, practically lived for it. Every summer, he'd vanish into the wild for weeks, coming back with stories of trails, bears, and starlit silence. When he went missing in the Kootenay National Forest last September, the authorities assumed it was a bear attack. Closed the case. Just like that. But I know Adam. He was obsessive about safety. Always carried a beacon, flare gun, even bear spray strapped to both thighs. He didn't just disappear. 3 weeks after the search was called off, I decided to go out there myself. Not for closure, not even for answers. Just, something inside me wouldn't let it go. I had Adam's old GPS, his coordinates, and the last voice memo he'd sent me. I must have played it 50 times. Greater than if anything happens, check the old pines above Mirror Lake. There's something, not right there. You'll hear it before you see it. He sounded terrified. My brother, who once chased off a mountain lion with a flare, sounded like he was begging for his life, so I took a leave from work, packed my gear, and headed out into Kootenay. I didn't tell anyone exactly where I was going, honestly. Part of me didn't expect to come back. It took 2 days to reach Mirror Lake. The weather was strange the whole time. No wind, no birds, and a low constant hum in the trees, like a distant engine. The forest felt too still. On the 3rd day, I found what I think was Adam's camp. The tent was shredded, not torn open, shredded, like something had slashed it from all directions. His gear was scattered, some of it melted. The fire pit was full of black ash, but no logs. Just a pile of what looked like burned rope, or hair, and then, the smell, not rot, not animal. Something sickly sweet and electric, like ozone mixed with spoiled meat. I wanted to turn back, but I didn't. I followed a narrow game trail Adam had marked in his GPS, heading toward what he called the old pines. They weren't hard to find. You could feel them before you saw them. The temperature dropped a good 10 degrees as I approached, and the trees grew tall and warped, twisted like they were reaching for something underground. And then I heard them voices, not talking, whispering low and breathless, just below the edge of hearing. Not from any direction, either. They seemed to come from everywhere. I thought it was wind at first, but there was no wind. That's when I noticed something worse. No tracks, no animal prints, no broken twigs, no insects. It was like nothing lived in this part of the forest. I kept walking, even though every instinct screamed at me to run. My flashlight started flickering even though I had just changed the batteries. My GPS glitched out completely, spinning, the map, flashing erratic altitude data like I was climbing thousands of feet in seconds. I found the cabin just before nightfall. It wasn't on any map. It looked old, not rustic, but ancient, made of thick timber, almost grown into the forest itself. The door was open. Inside, it was pitch black, and there were symbols carved into the wood, crude spirals, eye shapes, and human figures, upside down. Something about them hurt to look at. There was a photo nailed to the far wall, a black and white Polaroid. It was Adam, standing in front of the cabin, smiling behind him. In the shadows was something tall, with limbs too long. It had no face. I ran, but the forest had changed. Trails looped back on themselves. Trees moved. I'm not saying that in a poetic way. They literally weren't where they had been. I marked one with red chalk, came back 5 minutes later, and it was gone. Moved 20 feet. The whispers got louder, and then I heard my brother's voice. Don't look back, no matter what you hear. Don't look back. Asterisk, I didn't make it out. Not really. Somehow, I found the ranger station by dawn, covered in dirt, blood, on my sleeves that wasn't mine, and a cracked flashlight, still blinking weakly in my fist. I told them I got lost. They didn't ask many questions. I could tell from the way they looked at me that they'd heard things before. Maybe not this exact story, but similar. One ranger, old guy named Felix, took me aside and whispered, "Some parts of this forest don't follow rules. They take what they want. Best you can do is not go back." But I think I brought something with me. It's not in me. It's around me. I feel it. In the static on the TV. In the shadows under the bathroom door. In the reflection of windows when I pass by. Last week, my dog wouldn't come near me. Just barked at the corner of the room behind me, growling low and confused. Then she ran away. I haven't seen her since 2 nights ago. I woke up standing at my front door. No memory of getting there. Mud on my feet. Pine needles in my sheets. And sometimes, I hear the whispers again, in the silence before sleep. Whispering things I can almost understand. I keep telling myself it wasn't real, that I imagined it, that forests are just forests. But sometimes, when I look into the tree line outside my backyard, where the pines grow thicker than they should, I see something move. And last night, I swear I heard my brother's voice whisper, "Don't look back." My name is Mark Riley, and if you're reading this, don't go into the Wind River backcountry alone. Not after what happened last summer. Not after what I saw. It started as a solo trip, a way to clear my head. My girlfriend had just left me. My dad was recovering from a stroke, and work was a pressure cooker. I needed silence, stillness, the wild. I picked a route deep in the Wind River Range, northwest of Lander, Wyoming. Not the usual tourist stuff, but off the CDT, where the terrain is sharp and raw and beautiful. The kind of place where your phone loses signal within 30 minutes. That's exactly what I wanted. I set out mid-July, fully loaded, with my maps, satellite beacon, and enough supplies for 5 days. The first 2 were perfect. I hiked under sapphire skies, drank from snowmelt streams, and slept beside alpine lakes with glassy reflections. It felt like the old world untouched, sacred. On day 3, I took a detour. I came across an old, overgrown trail, branching west into a ravine that wasn't marked on my map. Something about it felt magnetic. The air shifted, the soundscape changed, quieter, denser. It smelled of moss and copper. I don't know why I went in. I just did. After 20 minutes, the ground started rising into steep shale. Trees grew stranger, twisted, almost burnt-looking, though there were no signs of fire. I passed an elk skull wedged upright between 2 stones, like it had been placed there. That should have been my sign to turn back. Instead, I kept climbing, and I found the circle, a wide clearing halfway up the slope, rimmed with tall dead pines. No grass, no snow, just dirt, and in the center, a perfect ring of bones, small bones, hundreds of them, arranged tip to tip, all pointing inward. Squirrels, birds, rabbits. I even recognized a dog femur, and in the middle of it all, a pile of black ash. No footprints, no insects, not a single bird call. I stepped back, took a photo. My phone powered off. That's when I heard the whistle. It came from behind a tree, 3 sharp notes, like someone calling a dog, but there was no one there. I turned to run, but the trail was gone. I spiraled down the slope in panic, bushwhacking blindly through undergrowth and brush. My compass spun in circles. My GPS blinked, no flicks. Every tree looked the same, and I knew I was going in circles. When I stopped to catch my breath, I realized something else. The forest had changed. It wasn't just dark, it was wrong. Trees grew impossibly close together, their bark gray and swollen like skin. And the sounds, not wind, not animals, but something, breathing. Then came the smell, iron, wet dog, something sour. That's when I saw it. At first it looked like a shadow moving between trees, but it wasn't cast by anything. It was the shadow. 7, maybe 8 feet tall, humanoid, long arms. But it moved like it was gliding, not walking. I froze. It stopped too. Then it cocked its head, like it was listening, and it whistled. 3 sharp notes. The exact same ones I heard earlier. I ran. I don't remember much except branches tearing at my face, hands, neck. I dropped my pack. I don't know how far I went, but I found an overhang, crawled beneath it, and curled into myself. That night, I didn't sleep. I just listened. At exactly 3:12 a.m., it whistled again, but this time, from directly above. I woke up with frost in my hair, blood dried into my shirt, and no feeling in 2 of my fingers. I bolted. No direction, just down. I kept screaming, trying to hear my own voice over the thing that kept moving through the trees beside me. Never too close, never too far. After what felt like hours, I stumbled onto a trail, a real trail, with a marker, CDT, 18 miles. To Lander. I nearly collapsed with relief. But even as I limped down the path, I knew it wasn't over. I reached civilization by dusk, collapsed near a fire lookout tower. They called SAR, and I was taken to the hospital in Lander. Frostbite, lacerations, severe dehydration. I told the sheriff my story. He didn't laugh, didn't even blink. He just said, "You went past Firewatch Ridge, didn't you?" I nodded. He leaned in and whispered, "You never enter that side of the range alone. It doesn't like being disturbed. I've been home for months now, but things haven't gone back to normal. My boots still smell like that coppery rot. I find bone fragments in my laundry. My dog won't come near me, and sometimes, around 3 a.m., I hear whistling through my bedroom window. 3 short notes. Last night, I found pine needles on my pillow. I don't know what that circle was, or what the ash meant, but I know this. It saw me, and now it knows where I live. My name is Helena Ward. I'm a graduate student in environmental biology at a university in North Carolina. Last spring, I was granted permission to spend 5 days in the Okefenokee Swamp, one of the largest, most untouched wetlands in North America, to collect soil and water samples for my thesis on microbial life in acidic marshes. I was alone, which wasn't unusual for field. I had a satellite phone, GPS tracker, bear spray, and a 12-gauge I'd borrowed from my uncle, just in case, he said, joking about gators the size of golf carts. My launch point was from the west side, where tourism thins out and the old hunter trails begin. By day 2, I had made camp miles away from any road or marked trail. The swamp was eerily beautiful, sunlit mist dancing through skeletal cypress, dragonflies hovering like spirits. But it was also quiet, too quiet. That evening, as I set up my equipment, I noticed something bizarre. The water, which should have been still was, vibrating, just slightly, like something enormous was moving beneath it. I crouched beside the edge, thinking it was a gator or fish, but the ripple kept going, in a perfect, slow-moving circle around my camp. No wind, no wildlife, just that unnatural ring of motion. Later that night, I started hearing the sounds, not frogs or owls, but voices, soft and low, like whispers through water. Words I couldn't make out, except one that kept repeating, below, asterisk. On day 3, things went from strange to terrifying. At dawn, I went to retrieve a sensor I'd placed near a patch of still water, thick with duckweed. When I stepped into the marsh, just up to my boots, I felt something tug my leg. I fell, sank nearly to my chest in muck. But what shook me wasn't the mud. It was what I saw as I struggled, directly beneath the surface. Staring up at me from the darkness below was a human face, pale, bloated. Its eyes were open. I screamed, thrashed free, fell back on the edge of the dry patch, and stared into the water again. It was gone. That's when I noticed the moss-covered cross, half submerged and leaning to one side, about 20 feet deeper in the swamp. Someone had placed it there, a memorial. No name, just a carved spiral and a date I could barely make out. 1978. I wanted to pack up and go, but I had to retrieve my samples. I'd invested months for this data, so I made a deal with myself. One more night. That night, the voices got louder. They no longer whispered. They murmured, chanted, the same word, again and again. Below, below, below. I called the satellite phone line, but there was no answer. Just static, and something like wet breathing. Around midnight, my tent began to sink. I felt it shift beneath me. The earth softened, sagged. I rushed out barefoot and watched as my tent slowly tipped, sliding half its frame into the bog-like. Something was pulling it under. My shotgun, inside the tent, disappeared with it. Then came the smell, not rot, not sulfur, but something old and metallic, like iron left in wet blood. And then, the dragging sounds. Asterisk at 4:41 a.m., I fled. Left the samples, left the gear, left everything. I moved fast through the knee-deep water, flashlight flickering, GPS dead. I thought I could follow the sun, but the sky stayed dim, gray, clouded. I wasn't sure if I was circling. The swamp was endless. At one point I saw footprints, human ones, barefoot deep and recent, leading into a mist-covered patch of water. I followed. That's when I saw the girl, standing in the shallows, maybe 20 feet away. Long, wet hair covering her face, skin grayish-blue, not blinking. I called out to her. She raised her hand and pointed at the water. Then, slowly, she began to sink. Not panic, not drowning, just descending, like gravity no longer applied. Her face never changed expression. Her hair floated as her head went under. Gone. I didn't move for a long time. I was too afraid of what might surface next. Then came the bubbling. Big bubbles, thick sulfuric gurgles, like something breathing from beneath the earth. And then, the same voice again, this time, in my ear. You were invited. I ran until I hit the old ranger shack from the 1960s, one I didn't even think still existed. Half rotted, but it had a working radio. I hit the emergency frequency on repeat for an hour before someone answered. It took a rescue team 5 hours to reach me. They said I was lucky to be alive. I didn't feel lucky. I went back weeks later with officials to retrieve my research equipment. The area I had marked on GPS, it didn't exist anymore. That entire stretch of swamp, over half a mile wide, had collapsed into itself. A sinkhole, they said. But it wasn't natural. It was too smooth, too round, like something below had pulled the land inward. And the strangest thing, they found 3 other crosses just like the one I saw, hidden in different areas, all with the same spiral carved on them. All dated between 1950 and 1981. All unmarked, no. One would talk about it. I still hear the voices sometimes, when I shower, when I swim, when I close my eyes near water. They're not gone, they're just waiting, asterisk, asterisk. I'm Nate Brooks, a seasonal trail surveyor. It's not a glamorous job, but it gets me into untouched wilderness, my kind of peace. In October of 2023, I was sent into the San Juan Mountains in southwest Colorado, tasked with mapping erosion, damage on forgotten trails before winter hit. Solo trip, 5 days in the backcountry. Nothing unusual, except this trail wasn't on any official map. I found it at the end of a dead logging road, blocked by fallen trees, as if someone didn't want it found. But the old wooden marker was still there, rotting and nearly buried under moss. Dead timberline, 10,411 feet. Never heard of it. I should have turned around. But there was something weird about the place that drew me in. The forest was darker, quieter. The wind didn't move through the pines like it usually does. No birds, no squirrels, no distant hum of insects. Like something had hit mute on the whole world. I set up camp just before dusk, laid out my maps, ate freeze-dried chili. That night, as I zipped into my sleeping bag, I heard a distant knocking, 3 slow raps, like someone tapping a wooden staff against a hollow tree. It was deep in the woods. Then again, 3 knocks. Closer. No animal makes a sound like that. By midnight, it stopped. But the forest never started making normal sounds again. It stayed unnaturally silent. That was the first night. Asterisk. On the second day, I hiked deeper up the trail. The trees thinned, but instead of opening to a ridge or meadow, they grew twisted and gnarled black bark, split trunks. Some looked half-burnt. And all along the trunks, I noticed something disturbing. Claw marks, not bear marks. I know the difference. These were vertical, narrow, long. Too long and high, like whatever made them had height. I snapped a few photos. As I did, I noticed something else. The trees began to form a pattern. They twisted inward, forming a rough circle around a mound of stones covered in orange fungus. I didn't touch it. I didn't even step inside the ring, but I took one photo. Before backing away, my GPS blinked out again. So did my watch. I looked down, and it was 1:27 p.m. When I looked back up, the sun had moved. It was late afternoon. I had lost nearly 4 hours I didn't remember. No injury, no sleep, no explanation. I turned around. I didn't even gather my samples. I just wanted to get back to camp. That night, something moved through my camp while I pretended to sleep. I heard twigs snapping, a dragging sound, slow, intentional. Then, 3 knocks on the tree just outside my tent, and a voice. A man's voice, low and muffled like it was coming from under wet fabric. You saw it. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I passed out from sheer fear sometime before dawn. Asterisk. The third morning, I tried to hike out, packed light, ran the entire first mile. But the trail had changed. The markers I'd carved into trees, gone. The ridge I descended, nowhere. I was walking in circles. The forest looped on itself. Then I saw something I will never forget. A man, no, a thing, shaped like a man, standing perfectly still in the tree line, wearing what looked like an old miner's coat, shredded and covered in soot. His face wasn't a face. It was black, smooth, like polished stone or wet bark. He raised one arm stiffly and pointed at me. Then another appeared behind him, then another, silent, motionless, all pointing. I ran, I tripped, slammed into rocks, tore my jacket, and skinned to hell. At some point I blacked out. I woke up that night in the same camp I'd started from, but all my gear was gone. My tent, my food, even my boots. All that remained was the camera. The one I'd used to photograph the stone mound. The screen was cracked, but it still powered on. I scrolled through my photos, hoping for something that could explain what was happening, but every image, every single one was gone, except one, a photo I didn't take. It was a picture of me, asleep in my tent, from outside the fabric, and in the photo, there's a black, bark-faced figure, kneeling next to the tent, staring straight at me. Its mouth is open. I don't remember how I got out. A hunting party found me stumbling barefoot near the canyon road for days after I'd gone in. I was missing toenails, hypothermic, and had trench foot in both soles. When the search team went back to retrieve my gear, the trail was gone, like it never existed. They didn't believe my story, but I did some digging. In 1935, a silver mining town named Ashrock vanished from the same region. No survivors. Just one journal found by a ranger, decades later. In it, the final page read, "They come from above the timberline, faces of bark. They feed on memory, on paths, on time." I never went back. I never will, but sometimes I wake in the night to hear 3 knocks on the side of my house. Just 3, never 4, never 2. Just enough to let me know they still remember me. Asterisk.